It's time to cowboy up for your new life.
I love it.
Yeehaw! I had to add it.
I love it.
I had to do it. Hello, everybody, and welcome to podcast number 91 of the Gordon and Cherise Show. We are so happy to be back with you. This topic today, it's got me going already. Before we even start this podcast, I've been saying a few comments on the side, and you'll know why in just a second, because the name of this podcast today, are you ready, Gordon?
I'm listening, Cherise.
It's time to cowboy up for your new life.
I love it.
Yeehaw! I had to add it.
I love it.
I had to do it.
And what's so important about this is we're going to focus on bull riding. And it's because I have such a dear friend who's also a chiropractic physician. He practices just north of Denver. And so he had practical experience with bull riding. So I got to hear so many stories about his life and what he went through on the bull riding circuit. But one thing
wait a minute. He was a cowboy, bull rider, and a chiropractor?
And then he became a chiropractor. I think enough broken ribs, okay? He switched careers at that time.
Yep.
But he has such a love for animals and people. One thing I learned from him, most importantly, is his mindset of what he dealt with during difficult times.
Right.
So we're going to apply some of those principles today. So
Did
I love
he ever
this.
put you on the bull?
No, I never went on the bull. So for me, that was not my affinity. I did not have an attraction to that whatsoever.
I can't even. You guys were probably like night and day as far as your differences in those ways.
Yes.
Get you out of the animal pen and get you on a golf course.
That would be much better for me.
Yeah.
Yes. But time to cowboy up for your new life.
Yes.
And when we were working on this, all of us are riding the bull of life. There is some opposition to everything that we're trying to do.
Right.
And when people are bull riding, the competitors, okay, they have to stay on that bull for 8 seconds. So how many times in our lives where we feel like we're getting started, we're trying to get unstuck from our problems, and we have those 8 seconds to pause and make a decision about what we're going to do.
That's good. And if that bull rider just said, okay, after his first try and it was 3 seconds on the bull, I quit, he could never get to 8 seconds, right?
He could never get to 8 seconds, but also that self-sabotaging would also lead to further injury. It would lead to mental defeat. It would lead to cracking his identity and basically eroding his purpose on what he's doing.
Right.
And we all struggle with that in our own life. So that term cowboy up, I don't want the audience to feel like they have to muscle up to their pain full time, because that's not accurate and that's actually not healthy. But there are those momentary sessions of 8 seconds where you need to cowboy up. In other words, you need to adopt a tough approach or course of action. And it means that when things are getting tough, you have to get back up. You have to dust yourself off and keep trying. We all have to cowboy up and let's get the job finished when you're going through your trial.
It reminds me, I did write down a few cowboy quotes.
Oh, boy.
All right. Are you ready? I
I'm
don't
ready.
know who said it, but these are famous cowboy quotes. So the first one that applies to what you just said is, there comes a time in the affairs of man when he must take the bull by the tail and face the situation.
Sure.
And it's just good practical wisdom.
Sure. And sometimes this is an old Texas saying, sometimes things are not as bad as they seem, but they're also not as good as they could be.
Right.
Okay? And it's those sessions that we deal with trying to get unstuck. And by golly, sometimes the problems are so much bigger than us. Sometimes it feels like a tidal wave coming over our lives. We have to stand firm and with our faith, and literally stand firm physically and endure that short period of time where we're going to be so tough in our resolve. We're going to be so strong in our faith. We're not going to let the opposition or the darkness or the fear or the real practical things in life just knock us down to nothing.
Because imagine if that person was trying to pretend that bull wasn't real, and that it was fake, and just wishing the bull away. It doesn't work that way. Especially when you've gotten on the bull.
That's right.
You can't wish it away. You're on the beast. Okay, it doesn't mean you're the beast. It doesn't mean that you're going to die. It means you might get beat up, and life beats us up. It beats all of us up. But another cowboy quote that I love about that,
yes, ma'am,
is brace your backbone and forget your wishbone.
Okay. I like that.
Isn't that good? It's just like, okay. Let's go. So keep going, Gordon, because you've got so many good
We have so many
thoughts.
things, and this is going to be either a 2 or 3 part series. The Lord just downloaded in my heart a lot of material, and I pulled up basically from my own reservoir of what I've dealt with mentally, how I've equipped myself to get through some very difficult and fiery trials. So I love sharing the practical things with people. It's like coaching them. It's like helping them, encouraging them. It's not diagnosing them. It's not treating them, but there's some things that they can actually do to cowboy up, to get back up when you feel like you've been knocked down.
Totally.
Okay. So inevitably, all of us, get bucked off the bull of life when dealing with chronic pain or difficult circumstances. The question is, do we have the grit within us to get back up and get on that bull again?
I think some people might say, I don't know if I do.
And I think then the second question would be, how do I do it? And I would say 2 things to get the process started. Change your mindset and change your attitude. So we're going to start right there. Because if your vision, let's say you're going through pain and you're going through difficult circumstances and you have been knocked down, or you've only been on that bull for 3 seconds and you've been thrown off and he steps on you and breaks a rib or breaks your leg and you're really injured and you feel completely defeated, okay? It is so easy then to set your mindset on the painful trauma that you underwent. Okay, that might be momentary. That might be your 8-second flashing in life. But we can't keep our mindset completely fixated on the problems or the fear or the discouragement from the circumstances in our life. Okay, we're probably going to give up when we keep doing that.
Because you're digging your own hole in that time.
Right.
I think it's when you only look at the discouragement. I mean, true. The rib can be broken. Might be flat in bed because you fell off the bull.
Right.
And I agree with you, Gordon. The change, there has to be a time for healing to take place. You can't get back on that bull the second you fall off if you break ribs and you can't walk, right? But the one thing that you're really activating at that point, and that I've seen you do over and over again, is it starts in the mind.
Yes, it does.
It starts with that attitude.
Right. And I know that it might sound like I'm repeating things, but you can say different things 100 different ways when it comes to the mind.
Totally.
We know that your thoughts are the language of your brain. And your emotions are the language of your body. So if we keep thinking about the old past, the painful traumas, all the things that we deal with,
All the setbacks.
And we keep our vision and our mind focused on those traumatic events, that's going to define who we are and how we live and how we feel about the future.
Right.
Now, there is that 8-second phase or session in our life, and maybe that 8-second phase is a year. Okay, you're trying to get over some severe injuries or stabilize your health to a level in which you can function, or deal with the trauma of a divorce or the emotional things you're dealing with grief, with a death. There is a certain 8-second period. But during that 8-second period of your life, that phase, we have to start changing our mindset.
Yes.
And so my focus has always been, even on the setbacks. I've had setbacks just recently. People wouldn't even realize it. Okay, I don't even discuss it with the crew on what's going on within my world every day. You get to see it. Okay, those traumas are showcased. They're real. The physical exacerbations of what I deal with pain are real. But I always do this. I go inwardly. Instead of pulling out the negative things from my past, I carry the good memories. They're like treasures in my heart. But I focus on going inwardly and how do I live out the future that I know is promised to me, even in eternity. So I count on God's nature, his divinity, his perfectness, his absolute knowledge, his absolute glory that's so high above man's. We cannot comprehend it.
Right.
I count on that, as well as the promises he delivers to all mankind, not just Gordon Sully. It's to everyone who's listening.
That's so good.
He offers that.
Yep.
So I focus on, how do I move my mind towards the future, and how do I live it out in the present time? And trying to live it out in the present time during that 8-second phase is sometimes very difficult. And it's a practice. It's developing a skill to do that.
When you say you go inward, that's such an important thing to remember, because if you based it on the outward, if you tried to, quote, look into the future based on outward appearances, you would be fetal. Not here today, not on a podcast. You would become hopeless, because if all of the external circumstances that are screaming in at your body, right? If those things have control over your future, you're not going to have a future.
No.
Or at least your future will be so sedentary you wouldn't want a future. And the inward parts of you that cling, and you mentioned this, that cling all the way into eternity. It doesn't stop. And this life is almost like our practice round, in the sense of, we have a future that is bright, and it will be pain-free one day. It may not be on this earth, but it will happen. We will have no pain. We will have no tears. All of the things that we suffer in this world, God, as we have said before, wastes nothing. But if you can't attach yourself to that, then you're attaching yourself to something that's so external that doesn't give you any hope. When you attach yourself to the promises of God and his hope, I see such a difference in you.
Right.
I see such a resolve. I don't see you letting all of the trauma of your pain dictate how you're even going to talk to me in the moments where your pain is spiked.
Right.
I see you go inward. Sometimes you're very, very quiet. That's okay. You're trying to catch your gravity in that moment with God. But I see it, and I so appreciate how I've watched the growth in you over the 25 years, 26 almost, in our marriage, of how you do practically go inward. You're not fantasizing about not having pain either when you're going inward. I don't even think that, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but I do.
Well, that's wonderful, Cherise.
That's a first, isn't it? But I do want to ask you, when you're going inward, are you really even thinking as much about your pain, or does it stop the process of you thinking about all of your acute symptoms you're going through in that moment? And does it transcend you beyond that with God?
What happens when I go inward, okay, is that I'm dealing with discontinuity in my own body. Everything is firing off in opposite directions. And as strong as I am mentally, Okay, there's a reflexive reaction even to the pain that doesn't stop, and it warms up and it heats up and it gets worse, and there's more throbbing and there's more electric shocks that I experience in my legs. There's more visual blurring, more fatigue. Is that develops? It's almost like an anthem in my body. My body's is sensing that. My body then has to become my mind, because the body is interpreting every part of my emotion. Okay? And so to train that, I have to become the master over my body. I have to make my body my slave. So when I go inwardly, first thing I do, I yell out words like calm down, reset, what's really real. Because if we carry pain with us into the future, we're like a nomad in the desert, carrying this heavy weight of pain, 50 pounds, 75 pounds, and even heavier. Okay, we can't do it. It's like this. If I hold this cup of coffee right here, and I go ahead and hold it, and we ask the question, how much does this weigh? Well, the cup's probably, it's less than a pound, and the coffee could be 2 pounds. Let's say we're under 3 pounds. That's not heavy. So that's the anxiety and pain we might carry. But if we hold that cup of coffee for an hour, what does it do to our body? If we hold all those negative thoughts, if our faith isn't activated, what does that do to our body? Well, my arm's going to be very sore.
Can you keep your arm out like
no,
this
I cannot
for the
do that,
whole
Cherise.
duration?
No. You would actually love to see that.
I think it would be, I want to see if you have the mental discipline. It's part of cowboying up, honey.
Okay. But imagine holding it the whole day. Imagine the additional trauma that you would put on your body.
Totally.
A lot of people are holding that all day, in a sense, beyond their 8-second phase.
That represents the past traumas. It represents everything that the anxieties, as you say.
The anxieties, the worries, the additional pain, and then creating additional pain by not breaking free. I think breaking free is not just, quote, quote, I'm going to get rid of all my pain or be disappointed in God.
Right.
My idea is, I've known in my venture, breaking free is having the freedom to make a choice. Okay? A freedom to make a choice in how I'm going to work with this. Now, here's what I've noticed with a lot of people in that Cowboy-Up time. Okay? It's about being tougher. It's about having more strength and more courage. And God supplies that, by the way. Okay? But it's about having that resolve. And people today will take faith and they want things to disappear. So it's easy to move into idealism. It's very easy to do that. I mean, it's been tempting for me. When I'm down, what attracts me as a human being when I'm broken? Inspiration. Well, idealism is a fantasy world. So people are wanting that type of inspiration. And so then what happens is the truth of the matter, they want it to disappear. They want their pains gone.
Right.
They want their broken past gone. That's not the way you walk into the new.
Yeah.
That's not how we're created.
Yeah.
Okay? You walk into the new and you change your neurological wiring in your brain by doing new things, creating new repetitive habits.
Yep.
So I know that when I reset, when I do that, I'm saying to myself inwardly, it is time to stick with the program. It is time to stick with the routine of what I know mentally, what I know from my body, and what I know from my spirit. And it is time to move in that direction and stick with the routines that are healthy and that will move me into a new person that's full of healing and repair and restoration. That's where I want to live.
Because the healing mechanism in your body is still firing off and working, even in pain.
Yes. Yes,
it doesn't
is.
seem like it that could go together, but you've taught me that.
Yes. And I don't want people to say that I'm big on having pain. I just know the stats. 99.99+% of people in the world are not having total pain relief.
Right.
That does not mean that I don't believe in the wonder-working God who does miracles, because I do. I've seen them. I've seen them in my practice.
Yes.
We've heard about them from close friends who have been eyewitnesses to miracles internationally.
We've had them in our own life too.
We've had them in our own life.
Yep.
We've seen marriages come together when they shouldn't. We've seen people healed of diseases when it didn't seem like it was appropriate.
But here's where I think we've both grown in our faith.
Well, tell me, Cherise.
Is that we don't put what we want the miracle to be upon God. I think we give God the space to work the miracle that he wants to work.
According to his will.
Exactly.
Yes.
And that miracle may be the grace to endure the pain.
Absolutely.
And, I've seen that too. Like, if the pain story isn't fully resolved until you are completely pain-free in the presence of Jesus, a miracle is still happening inside of you. And I love that you said the word reset, and that you say that when you go inwardly.
I do.
And you know what I in my mind's eye, as you were talking about that, one thing that I kind of saw when you said that is, okay, reset, you're being still for a moment inside. And you're not trying to run this. You're not trying to get off the bull and run in the arena with the bull. Can you imagine? You would be slaughtered.
Well, thank you, Cherise.
It's like,
I would like to think that I could somehow get away from the bull.
But that reset, just it allows you to have the strength to get on that 8-second ride. That reset. And what I really saw in my mind was having that reset gives you a space to invite the communion of Christ with you inside of your pain.
Yes.
Because part of cowboying up is realizing the limitations of our strength. And it doesn't mean that we don't have the discipline or the fortitude. In fact, those things you carry in great measure, and every single person listening, you can live with this mindset too of going inward and allowing these truths to really penetrate your heart. But it to me, foundationally, there's that relationship that begins first.
There is. And I think talking in simple talk, not just smoothing it over with Christian vocabulary. Mm-hmm. When I go inwardly, here's the real talk.
Let's hear it.
God is real. See, God is as real to me inwardly that I can see him outwardly. Mm-hmm. So when my vision is on the future and I live it in the present time and I go inwardly with him, the word that pops up for me is clarity. So the more I go inwardly, the more clear the vision is for my future. And the more I realize, since he is so real to me inwardly, as well as the expression of outwardly, I see his sovereignty and his providence everywhere in every facet of life, okay, throughout the universe and everything else. That's those special times I have with him inwardly through prayer, through the word, through contemplative thinking, through getting reset because I have a thorn in the flesh that might have been jarred and I've got an exacerbation of pain. Mm-hmm. I see the greatness of God.
That's good.
That's real.
Yes.
That's what I want people to get from our podcasts. If you want to deal with mental, emotional, and bodily changes, transformation, there is a real and true God that will help you through that. And of course, it's through Jesus Christ and the Holy Spirit.
Amen.
And that is the parts that are wonderful. Let's go to the next section. And honestly, Cherise, we just got through the introduction.
I know. I'm just staring at you going, wow, this might be a 7-part series before we're done. I don't know where we're going, but it's pretty awesome.
It's real for the people. This is real stuff. I'm sharing things that have really got me through the worst of the worst.
Yep.
And I want to see that for the others.
Totally.
I want them to get that encouragement or inspiration, especially when they're broken. Tips about avoiding some nightmares about your painful traumas. Mm-hmm. So when you get these painful traumas, we've touched upon it. You can't live off the mind biology of your past. Okay? The physiological changes that take place in the brain with the neurotransmitters and bring up certain things on how you think and how you feel and how you act. You've got to decide essentially on what behaviors and conscious actions you have to work on. What can you work on to grow into that new person? Well, in order to do that, the first step is to showcase all the unhealthy emotions from all the traumas you've had. The traumas are real. The traumas of your past and the brokenness of your past,
that's right.
Those are real. So we can't move into idealism and just say we're a new person and those never existed.
Well, that's what I said in that cowboy quote.
Right.
You must take the bull by the tail and face the situation.
Right.
So trauma is real and no one is underplaying the traumas. Because we all have them. There is not a human being on this planet that doesn't have a trauma that they are either currently dealing with or that they have dealt with.
But the good news is this, everyone. When you get into that space, you have the ability to decide on what you're going to do, on how you act accordingly to the traumas you had.
Yeah.
So you take those emotions. Literally, you take those emotions and make new decisions. You can either be a victim, or you can move on and be a leader, and you can forget what's behind on the wasted loops and the wasted time you've had with some of those emotions, and you can start rewiring your brain and bringing your future into the present.
I agree. And Gordon, sometimes it's easier said than done. And it's, some people have had deep, deep emotional traumas, sexual trauma, things that are, we're not really addressing all of those things on this podcast, but I'm sensitive to it. And I'm sensitive to the emotional traumas that people have carried. And it's not that those things are little. We're in a mindset in our culture that finally says you can acknowledge your traumas, right? But after you acknowledge it, where do you go from there? If you just acknowledge it, then that means, as you've said, you can live with the biology of that staying in your brain and keeping you in the same loop. Okay, once you acknowledge it, it's like you have to do a purge. There has to be the awareness before you can move into healing. There has to be. But there is one who is with you during facing those things. You're not facing them to be re-entered back into the shame or the despair or the abuse, but it's facing them with Jesus. It's facing them knowing you're not facing them alone. And I have to say that part because it's, I think that sometimes when people are having to face their trauma, they may relive it feeling like that child who was alone. But when you bring who you are now in Christ, when you bring the fact that you are actually loved and never alone, and that there is one who has walked with you through all of these traumas, Christ has been invisible through them at certain points, but he's been there. And you realize that if you keep reliving the trauma and basing who you are now on who you were, then the enemy gets the victory.
You just said something very important. Can you repeat it?
I don't know if I can. The enemy would get the victory if you base on who you were. If you base today based on who you were in those traumas instead of where you're going and who you are now.
And who you're becoming.
Who you're becoming, exactly.
Okay.
Yes. I think it's so important and to remember that going through it, it's one thing. But as you've said, there is a choice in the identity about who you're becoming. Don't become a slave anymore to letting that trauma define the new parts of you that can happen.
We may carry the scars, but they don't have to be pain producing.
Exactly. That's right. They don't have to be a trigger anymore.
So the connectedness, the connective tissue of our soul doesn't have to keep producing pain. We don't have to keep holding it up and making sure that pain still exists in our scars.
Right. That's
Okay.
right.
They might be a form of remembrance. They might be a form of humility. Pain might actually be a gift from our past. But it's a gift as we know that God is molding who we are.
Exactly.
Okay? It's not a gift when we're always in control of our own life and we think that we're in control of God and we think that our thoughts are on an equal plane with Him.
That's right.
Okay? Your brain cannot rewire to that.
No.
So what happens is you develop worse habits with your body and your emotions and then your thoughts.
That's right.
And so we want to walk into a healthy way. Listen, we're going to take a different approach today. We've taken two different approaches. We're not wearing
those headphones.
Yeah. Okay.
Yep.
So this is a different way to do the podcast. We're getting prepared for our online courses. And number two, we're going to change it. It's not going to be, Cherise, what is your thought for the day?
Oh, it's not.
No, it's going to be, what is your valuable takeaway that you would love to share with the audience for today on the message?
I think that my takeaway today is to be reminded to consider it joy. It talks about that in the Word. When we face trials, when we're facing that bull again, and we have to get back on it, I think of a cowboy. There was one in my life that was a very special man. And this cowboy was a part of our family. And I'll tell you, I never really understood the fascination with the fact that he had probably everything broken in his body at some point, but he would get back on the bull. But it was the sheer love of life. And that bull was part of the experience of life. And what he learned through getting beat up and getting back on that bull was a discipline that I can only begin to learn and respect. So that's a takeaway. Don't fear getting on that bull based on who you were, but just know that this is life and it's time to get back up, time to cowboy up and be strong in God.
Right. And part of that, my takeaway is this, part of that cowboy up mentality as well is understanding the repetitive patterns that occur in what you're doing and how you're reacting.
Good.
And so when we develop those repetitive patterns, we're developing a skill and art, but we want to do it in our habits. We don't want our habits to become bad habits that we follow.
Right.
So when we're developing new habits, that's when the body then becomes really ruled by the mind. That's when our mind is over our body, when the emotions in the body are craving different things, our mind can take over. And here's where it's important for each person here, is your faith is a mental process. Now, we may experience the emotions from it. We may experience the treasures in our heart, but it's also a mental process, and it's a belief system in your future and in your God and in something invisible that will manifest into something physical.
Right.
So we're all part of a becoming process, even in these trials. So don't be dismayed. Don't be discouraged. Be strong. Move forward.
That's good.
And that's our message for today.
Thank
Cowboy
you.
Up.
Boy, you look handsome in your green, by the way.
Okay. Thank you, Cherise.
Okay, we're going to catch you next time. And I'm so grateful for each one of you who have joined us. And please continue to go with us through these series and beyond. And be a part of our Better Living community.
Yes.
On Facebook. It's a private group. Please join it. Please be a part of that. Please subscribe on YouTube to Gordon and Cherise show. We really want to build up our YouTube followers, and we really would appreciate you subscribing to YouTube as well.
And as we finish, just so everyone knows, when we say subscribe, it's not to read some lengthy newsletter anymore. We've thought, what kind of gift can we give to each person? We're giving out the full audiobook.
Yeah.
So someone who wants to find out a little bit about us, find out some deeper information about suffering and transformation and finding and pursuing real hope, okay, you can download that book from our website. And we're giving that out for free. We want people to be engaged and to start being inspired even when they feel broken.
That's so good, Gordon.
So we'll see you next week,
We'll
Cherise.
see you next time. Thank you so much.
Thank you.